There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com to find a store near you.
Hi, I'm Travis, King of Source Point, and you're watching The Experience.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the damn Wickline Show. We're going to be talking about this guy, episode 3 of Hawkeye, in just a moment. We're going to do a spoiler conversation, but we will definitely run the spoiler banner before we do that. I need a better way to display this guy. He's a little in the shadows there. Let me see if I can do something real quick here, because, in the middle of a TV or an actual live broadcast is the perfect time to readjust and make decisions, isn't it? This is the exact time you want to go, yep, we're going to redecorate. So let's see how this works. Oh, I think that's a much better. Yeah, maybe turn them a little bit more. There we go. It's my co-host for the day, Clinton Barton. All right. But before we do that, I do want to bring up the fact that we got some interesting news. The other Marvel Disney Plus series, Secret Invasions, has added a cast member that we all kind of went, well, yeah, of course, which is Colby Smulders is returning as Maria Hill. Is it Maria Hill? It's Maria Hill. Yeah. So she's going to be part of the Secret Invasion cast, which makes a lot of sense. She was in Spider-Man Far From Home. She's been Nick Fury's side since the Avengers movie. Makes perfect sense. Now, the big news would be if Clark Gregg was joining, but we haven't heard about that. Man, I wish they'd bring him back into the MCU. I miss me some Coulson. He's always great, and seeing him in the What If series has just kind of rekindled that, what a great character Coulson is. So I do hope they bring him back. But speaking of bringing characters back, we should definitely talk about the Hawkeye episode, because if you watch anything online about the episode, you're going to know that a lot of people are pretty much certain that somebody is back, that a big bad guy has returned. And we'll talk about that in a second. But before we do that, we should probably make it official. JD, run the spoiler, please. All right. So we got that out of the way. We are going to talk about Hawkeye episode 3 called Echoes. Now, you guys have to remember when we did our spoiler conversation last week. JD, Sam Jackson is in the series. He's the star of it. It's Sam Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn. So they've already got Sam and Talos. They're already in it. So adding Maria Hill makes a lot of sense. They've also got Emily Clark and Amelia Coleman and some. Yeah, Marvel's not skimping on the cast at all. Yeah, they're going the deep pockets. Like, yep. What do you need? Okay, here's the money. Here you go. What do you need? All right. So last week, if you watched the show talking about Hawkeye, you'll know that I had some issues with it. For a series called Hawkeye, you would think it would have more of Hawkeye. Now, before anybody comes at me going, but Kate Bishop is also Hawkeye in the comics, not in the MCU. So when you label a show Hawkeye and you say Jeremy Renner is starring in it, you expect to see at least a good amount of Jeremy Renner in Hawkeye. And I'd say that the first 2 episodes really felt like it was the Kate Bishop show. And I wasn't really liking the character of Kate Bishop. I know I've read I've read the Fraction run. I know what the character's like in both that and the Young Avengers. But when I look at a series, I look at it for what we're being presented in the series. I try to look at it from somebody's point of view who doesn't know comics, who doesn't know about Kate Bishop and the Young Avengers or any of that stuff. And I just found the character to be kind of annoying and really, really overconfident for skills that didn't come across as that great. Now, that said, we roll into episode 3, and we get an entire episode that's Clint and Kate. It's their dynamic, which works really well. It's mentor and apprentice. It's, and you start seeing these two and how they're starting to think the same and stuff like that. And I like her a lot better after this episode. I like the relationship a lot better. And my thoughts on what may end up being Clint's fate at the end of this has changed drastically. But we'll get to that. We need to start off at the beginning, which is the character we met at the very last second in episode 2, Maya Lopez, or Echo, played by Alaqua Cox. Now, I know nothing about Miss Cox as an actress. I don't think she really had a whole lot of credits before that, but she's fantastic in this. But to start with, we've got to look at the episode opens up with a very young Maya in about 2007. And we see it kind of parallels Kate's opening in the first episode, but 5 years earlier. Now, I don't know how much older Maya is supposed to be. Is she supposed to be 29, 30? Is she supposed to be 10? I mean, it's hard to judge what age she's supposed to be right there. But she's in school. The books she's reading from look very young. She's just filling in words and sentences. So I'm going to go 8, 9, maybe 10 at the oldest. But we see that she's trying to go to a normal school. And partly that is because her dad can't afford to put her in a special school. But also we see that she's gifted and very smart, but she does it by watching and kind of observing. And they may not be doing her full power. Her power in the comics is that she can mimic anybody doing what they do just by watching them. She learned how to be a ballerina by watching a ballerina. She learned how to be a concert pianist by watching a concert pianist and martial arts and all that other stuff. In a lot of ways, she's very similar to Taskmaster. But you really don't see that here. You just see her being very observant. And so they may be downplaying that ability, that mimic ability. I think they call it photographic reflexes. At least they seem to be downplaying it, and I'm okay with that. It is a tough one to explain in a very grounded series. You've got a guy who's running around with a bow and arrow, and that's his main thing. So having a mutant or having somebody with these gifts, it's a little different. It's a little bit you have to explain. So if they downplay it, they're not saying that she doesn't have that ability, but what they're doing is they're not really focused on that. The other surprise, which isn't part of the character, but the actress has a prosthetic leg. And I believe, I mean, I don't know if it was the young version of her also appeared to have a prosthetic leg. Now, that could be camera trickery, or they found a young actress who can do ASL and do, and has the prosthetic leg. So that surprised me and was a very nice, surprise. We spend quite a bit of time with the young version of her. We meet her father, William, who in the comics has a very Native American name. I think he's called Crazy Horse. Here, he's just William Lopez. And, I mean, he might have that name, but we don't get it. And he seems like a very loving, caring father, but he's also part of the Tracksuit Mafia. And we find out that he was running the Tracksuit Mafia. So in the comics, Crazy Horse is a killer. He's a he's a hitman for Wilson Fisk. And then he and Fisk have a falling out. Fisk kills him, and then Kingpin ends up raising Maya as his own daughter and sending her all to proper schools and stuff. Well, here we see it's definitely different. We see that there's a character named Uncle. And Uncle is referred to a couple times in the episode, but during the flashback, we see William is talking to her during a martial arts session or training, and said, after your match, Uncle will take you home. And I guess he had to go do something. But we see this very large man, and you hear him walking when he comes up, and you don't hear William walking. So this is a very large man, and he's wearing a very nice looking suit. He's got cufflinks on, and he kind of rubs his hand on Maya's face, and you hear this little laughter. And just about everybody out there is convinced that this is not only Wilson Fisk, but this is Vincent D'Onofrio back as Wilson Fisk. And I got to tell you, I think I'm part of that group. The sound of the little chuckle he makes, the build, the hands, it really does feel like it's D'Onofrio. And Kingpin makes so much sense to bring him in here, especially with the Echo series coming up and stuff like that. So I don't know for sure. They've danced around it. There's been no official announcement. There is word that we get a big cameo at the end of episode 4, a big reveal cameo. So maybe that's going to come out. I think it's right around like a couple days, like right before, was that episode 5? But it's supposed to come out right around the time that Spider-Man No Way Home comes out, which is rumored to have Daredevil, Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox in it. So I could see them having those appearances close together so one doesn't really spoil the other too much. And where I know, we don't get it till the 17th, it's going to be released on the 15th in a lot of countries, England being one of them. So there's going to be just a ton of spoilers online before the premiere, or before it actually opens on the 17th. So you got to be careful about that, by the way. But so if I was going to put any money down, I wouldn't put a lot, but I could see putting $20 down that Wilson Fisk that Vincent D'Onofrio is going to reprise his role as Wilson Fisk in this series. Yeah, I could definitely put $20 down on that. Not that I condone gambling. Just saying. I'm just saying that hypothetically. Plus, I don't know anybody who takes those kind of bets. There's probably a sports book out there that does, but I don't know of it. So we get that scene, and then the next scene we get is Maya's watching as this big husky kid takes on this other little kid and easily throws him to the ground. And this big husky kid, he just looks badass. He really does. He's going to be an enforcer somewhere. And if he wasn't an African American kid, I would think that he was Ivan just from the size. But it turns out, though, that the first kid he throws down is listed in the credits as little Kazi, who is Kazi the clown from the Fraction series, the one that does the talking and chases after Kate Bishop in the early ones. So it looks like, and later in the episode, he refers to Uncle. So it makes me think that he's also the child of a tracksuit guy, and that Fisk kind of took them all in. You know, they were all going to this school together, this karate dojo together and stuff like that, which would make a lot of sense. Because, and we see another tracksuit guy at the dojo. So, but Kazi goes down, and then Maya gets up there, and this kid just kind of shaking his head because he sees this little girl with a prosthetic foot or a prosthetic leg, and he's like, you know, I'm gonna just, why are you putting her against me? It's not fair. And he goes in to do his move, and she, you know, counters it, gets behind him and pushes him over. And it's like, damn, okay, so she gets the idea. She can use, you know, studies somebody's moves and figures out how they work. Okay. That kind of works with her powers. But so we get that scene, and then it switches to, I want to say modern day, but a little bit later. Later enough that it's during the snap, because she is fighting somebody else and takes them down pretty easily in an MMA style fight. And then she heads to this mechanic shop called Fat Man's Auto Repair or whatever it is. And Fat Man seems like it might also be a reference to Kingpin. And she gets there in time to basically see Ronan just slicing his way through the tracksuit mafia and leaving her dad for dead. Now, I remember watching this and thinking a lot of stuff. And this potentially changes a huge part of her backstory. It changes quite a bit of the dynamic she has, how she turns from being part of being an assassin or a bad guy to being more of a good guy or an anti-hero. So I have a feeling it's not quite what we think it is, you know, and I wouldn't put it past Fisk to hire somebody to dress up like a hero or like a vigilante to cause problems and to do something that he wants done quietly, like he did in season 3 of Daredevil, where he had Poindexter or Bullseye dress in Daredevil's costume and attack people. So, yeah, I think that there's a possibility that maybe that's not Clint in the ninja costume, because we never get a solid look at it to go, oh, that's definitely Ronan's costume. We never get a solid look at the sword. We just get kind of a quick shaky cam type stuff. So I hold out. I mean, it definitely could have been Clint, but at the same time, when she came in, he's killing everybody in there. He doesn't even turn to look at her. He just jumps out the window, which almost makes it feel like there was a note to him not to kill Maya. So that's just a thought on that. But then we go from there to modern day, and we see Clint and Kate still strapped to those little quarter operated horses, like from out mechanical horses from out front of a five and dime type thing. Yeah, I'm old. Or a grocery store, and they're running them. They actually have quarters in them, and somebody jokes that maybe that they need to go get more quarters because they've run out and the machine stopped. JD says Little Maya is played by Darnell Basaw. Nothing firm out there, but a Reddit thread suggests she's not deaf or an amputee, but a Lacroix's second cousin. Okay. Yeah, I mean, they could teach her the ASL they needed, and they could definitely do. I mean, they hide it most of the time. We don't really see it until the actual fight, so that it would be easy enough for them to just CG the prosthetic in on that scene. So, and I don't think they showed a full body. They just kind of looked down and we see her foot and the prosthetic. So, I mean, they might even have swapped in a different kid. So, but by the way, Basaw was awesome. She was great. You know, and I got to tell you, all the little kids in this series, I'm usually not a fan of little children actors. They're nailing it. The girl that played young Kate, the girl that played young Maya, and Nathaniel, they're all nailing it. They're great, you know? So that's really cool. So Bert and Bertie and was it? Can't think of the other gentleman's name who directed the first two, but the directors are really good at working with these young kids, which is great. But so we get the scene, and then Echo comes down. Well, at one point, Kate is actually giving one of the tracksuit guys relationship advice. And I find it interesting that there's this recurring theme of dragons in the episode. Maya, when her and her dad are doing shadow puppets on the wall, makes a dragon to fight her dad's hawk, and then asks if dragons are real, which we kind of know they are in Shang-Chi, but he says that they might be, but they would be from a different world, and you know, if they were able to come here, they would be stronger. And that's kind of his advice to her, is that she needs to be of two worlds to survive, you know, the whole thing, because they can't afford to send her to a proper school for the hearing impaired, so she's going to have to make do, you know. And so the dragon thing there, but the Russian guy is upset because he bought his girlfriend tickets to go see Imagine Dragons, and then they got into a huge fight. And now instead of him going with her, she wants to take her sister. And this upsets him, and Kate's like, well, at least the consolation is you don't have to see Imagine Dragons. And he's like, I like Imagine Dragons. And it turns out he bought the tickets for himself, really, and then was taking her. So she was giving relationship advice, and then that's when Echo shows up. It's a cute scene, and the little banter between her and Clint also goes over well, as Clint basically tells her, look, you know, I was on the verge of getting this solved, and you dropped into the skylight. And once again, she's acting and not thinking, which is something I don't like about the character, something that doesn't match the character in the comics. She's a very methodical character, at least when it comes to Hawkeye. She is very much, Hawkeye in the comics is the one that doesn't think things through, and Kate's the one that kind of makes things come back together and happen. But here, it's flipped. You know, he's the one planning things. He's the wise one, and she's the overconfident, reckless, and rash one, which makes for an interesting dynamic. Now, Echo comes down, and she notices Clint's hearing aid. And first thing tells him that you're too dependent on technology. And he's like, my weapons are 2 sticks and a string. And she says, no, your hearing aid, you'd be better without it. And tries to sign to him. And I don't know if he did this on purpose. he signed back this weird sentence about, yes, I want another cookie, which, and I think in saying that he's hard of hearing, not deaf. Now, I don't know if he did that because he wanted to have her continue doing ASL, thinking that he wouldn't understand them, which would be a very spy thing to do. Or if he did that because he doesn't really know it that well. He hasn't been, it's been a gradual thing and he's still learning it. I get the feeling it's the first one. Yeah, JDC, I think that might be it, but I think maybe what he's doing is he did that to get her thrown off so that she would continue talking to Kazi in the sign language and maybe reveal something she wouldn't reveal to him. He's kind of slippery. He is one of those spies as well, like Natasha. Now, Clint tries to talk his way out of it, and it comes down to this interesting line. And basically, she knows that Ronan killed her father. That's her belief, is that Ronan killed her father. And we haven't seen any proof that it wasn't Ronan, but again, jury's still out on that for me. But so she wants to know if Ronan's back, why the costume suddenly popped up. And you'd think that she would go, well, I know it was at the auction. And so it bugs, this is the thing that bugs me a little bit, is that the story that they give is very plausible, and kind of true, because Kate did put the costume on to get people out of the building and not show her face at the auction. So then she goes out and then gets tracked. That's exactly what happens. And nobody knows that Clint was Ronan. So it's a plausible thing. And of course, Clint tells her that it's impossible that Ronan's back because Ronan's dead, and that Natasha or Black Widow killed Ronan. And she just goes, well, that's very convenient that he's dead and the person that killed him is dead. How do you know this? And he says, well, because I was there. Now, this is and I've heard a bunch of people use this analogy, and it's a great analogy. This is kind of the Ben Kenobi answer. Ben Kenobi told Luke that your father, Darth Vader killed your father. Well, that's because Darth Vader took over, he became Darth Vader, and Anakin was no more. So in a sense, Darth Vader, in a way, Darth Vader killed Anakin. Well, in a way, Natasha killed Ronan because she came to Clint with hope, came to Clint with a way to get his children back and his wife back, and that snapped him out of being Ronan. So Ronan died that day. He stopped being Ronan. So in a sense, it's true. If she had had Daredevil's powers, she would have sensed that his heart was probably telling the truth. But she doesn't have that. But yeah, so, and then they try to talk to Kate because they don't think they're getting anywhere with Clint. And she ends up trying to choke Kate because she's getting frustrated and wants answers. And Kate gets scared, and Clint just leans over to her while Kazi tries to get Maya to stop. She's like, will you stop? Because it seems like she's off book. And we hear this later on. Kazi approaches her and says, look, we're supposed to be keeping a low profile. We don't know why, but she's supposed to be keeping a low profile. And that Uncle wouldn't be happy knowing she's actively going after Ronan. Well, but that happens a little later in the thing. But we get he's stopping her from choking her. And Kazi is kind of the voice of reason here, which is really weird because he's going to become a character called the Clown. Anyway, so while all this is happening, Hawkeye tells Kate, look, now's not the time to be scared. Now's the time to be that overconfident person that you are. So lean into that. And as he's doing it, he's he basically gets his hands free, jumps off the little dime store horse. I don't even know what those are called anymore, but he hops off the little rocking horse thing and all the tracksuit and Maya go after him while Kazi stays and holds the gun on Kate. Now, I don't know why Kazi didn't point the gun at Kate's head and goes, "Return, Clint, or I'm going to kill her." He doesn't do that. But then, of course, this isn't the brightest group of guys anyway. I mean, you'd think that Kazi and Maya are a little better than the tracksuit, but not by a lot. But what we get, well, you know what? Let's pause here because I'm noticing the time. We'll pause real quick. We'll take a commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll pick it up with probably one of the best car chase scenes in all of Marvel history. Be right back.
I'm Thomas Munn with Blue Juice Comics, and you're watching The Experience.
All right, folks, we are talking about episode 3 of Hawkeye, and we are doing spoiler conversation. So we probably should run that spoiler banner one more time. All right, now let's get into Hawkeye gets free and goes on this chase he's doing great. He's running through a old KB toy store, which, oh, my heart. I used to love KB toys. They've been gone too long now. But he's jumping all around the KB toys. He's throwing toys at them. And this whole thing, he's trying to be non-lethal. I mean, the arrows he uses are target arrows, which are probably the least lethal of an arrow. I mean, he is shooting pointed arrows at people, but still. But he's running around. He doesn't get his arrows back right away. He's just trying to escape. And is doing well against the tracksuit guys. But when he actually has to fight Maya directly, is going pretty well until he pulls out a hockey stick and tries to hit her in the leg, and nothing happens because it's a prosthetic. So that throws him off enough that she's able to get a roundhouse kick to his head, which knocks his hearing aid out, and she steps on it. And that really throws him off because that's, we get a good sense of just how bad his hearing is. It's more than he has a hard time picking things up. It is pretty bad. But he gets to his feet and he keeps working. He ends up jumping into an office through a trampoline because there's trampolines at toy stores. And he finds his bow and his arrows, and they fights Maya a little bit more, but eventually gets 2 arrows off at her and pins her against the wall. Then jumps into, as he's jumping off of the second floor. He fires a shot that nicks Kazi in the ear and then frees Kate, who then starts fighting Kazi as he falls into a ball pit. And I got to tell you, Toys R Us closed in 2009. This episode is supposed to take place around Christmas 2024. That was the cleanest looking ball pit I'd ever seen in my life. All I can think of is that some of the Russians cleaned it up because they wanted to play in it. That's all I'm saying. It was a really clean looking ball pit. Now, they do some fighting, and Hawkeye does a lot of great shooting, and they get away. And as they get out, we get that scene that they released as kind of a teaser where they go past the 72 Charger because Hawkeye refuses to smash up a 72 Charger, and they get into this old Lincoln Continental, and he hotwires it, and Kate's supposed to drive, but Kate doesn't know how to drive, and they're not communicating well because he can't hear anything. And, of course, she does the old-fashioned try to speak louder and make hand signals that don't make any sense. But they end up hopping in the car as the Tracksuit Mafia comes running out and take off. The Tracksuit Mafia and Maya and Kazi all hop into their vehicles, and we get this one-shot car chase, or for a big chunk of it is this one-shot scene that is just amazing. And it's Kate taking the arrows and trying to shoot them, and Hawkeye trying to pull out the dangerous ones. And I mean, it's a pretty cool scene. I mean, it really is. It is probably one of my favorite chase scenes, like I said, we've seen in the MCU. We don't get a whole lot of car chases in the MCU, but this is, I mean, there's this and the Nick Fury one from Civil War. But this is really good. And we see Kate's skill as an archer, and we see Hawkeye's skill as a driver, who's really good as he's being chased by these guys, and she's shooting arrows, and they're going through all of the classic trick arrows that Hawkeye have. If you go back to the old Marvel Universe handbook, you'll see most of those arrows are listed: the suction cup arrow, the putty arrow, the acid arrow. That's all listed in there. So most of those are straight from the comics. And there's one that, like I said, shoots purple putty all over Kazi's window. And there's another one that it actually explodes. It's an exploding arrow, which we saw that in the trailer. That surprises Kate. But she is nailing every shot she's taking. And at one point she goes, it would be easier if we were facing the other direction. And he looks up and goes, it would be easier if we were facing the other direction. He flips the car around, is backing his way through things and running through a Christmas tree lot. It's a really fun scene. But they end up on a bridge they've smashed up the Charger after all. Poor car. And the track, this truck has come barreling at them, and he hands Kate a regular arrow, which is funny because he says I'm all out of arrows earlier, but he hands her a regular arrow and says, shoot up and down at the truck. And she's not sure why. And then he pulls out another arrow, and she finally lets it loose, and you see this really high arcing shot. And then Hawkeye leans back with his shot, and on the tip, you see it's got a blue glow to it, and it says Pym. And immediately I went, oh, yes. Yep, and with it being blue, red is shrink, blue is grow. He fires this arrow, he hits the other arrow, and it turns it into this giant 100-foot arrow that comes down and just nails into the bed of the truck. And, it blows up the gas tank. It is one of the coolest scenes. And I mean, practically, you could go through and go, well, wait, that doesn't work, this doesn't work, but absolutely loved the Pym-Tech arrow. William Holland says, Hawkeye shows us why we've been sleeping on him for years. I also love how the origins of Kate with Maya and how the shadow of Hawkeye Ronin affects them both. Absolutely. I think you've nailed it perfectly there. I talked a little bit about that earlier, but yeah, I think you got it perfect there. They definitely have parallels between Kate and Maya and Hawkeye's effect. Like I said, I'm not 100% convinced that it's actually Ronin and not somebody hired to look like Ronin to take out the tracksuit, but yeah, it's definitely there's some definite strong parallels there. Now, once they get away, they jump off the bridge. We get that turn and fire, the grappling hook arrow that we've seen a few times from the character. But he does it with Kate this time. They get on the subway. And then there's a lot of neat little personal scenes that happen. Kate and Clint riding the subway, where Kate immediately goes, "Oh, we need to walk the dog. He's been cooped up all day." And Hawkeye turns around and goes, "You're not wrong. You definitely can call yourself one of the world's greatest archers." And then she's like, "Really? I can't." He goes, "We should probably walk the dog. He's been cooped up all day." And it just, again, it's them. We see how alike the two of them are. And also there's this great poster, and I'm told that it's a real poster in the New York subways for a family counseling center. So it's just great that they have them sitting between that poster, or on opposite sides of that poster. But then we follow them, and they go back to the apartment, and Kate walks the dog, and Hawkeye gets a call from Nathaniel, and he can't hear him. And Kate gets back in time to tell him, it's not your wife, it's a little boy. And he goes, "Oh, Nathaniel, what's going on?" And she's basically listening and writing out what he's saying. But it's heartbreaking because Nathaniel says, "Are you going to be home for the movie marathon?" He goes, "No, I'll probably be another day or two." And Nathaniel says, "Well, it's okay if you can't be home for Christmas." And this is his little 6-7-year-old kid telling him that. And oh my God, that hurt. Oh, that did. And you saw it in Renner's face. He did such a good job of just showing the anguish of that scene and just the realization of how much he has sacrificed. It is a good scene. And the fact that she's helping him kind of connected me to Kate a little bit more. It's a really good scene. William says, hoping for a reveal that Kingpin may have hired someone to dress as Ronin to parallel with the comics Kingpin killing Maya's dad. Yeah, that's William. That's exactly how I think that's my thought as well, is that Kingpin hired someone, possibly Bullseye. He did that in Daredevil 3 in season 3. I could see him using somebody like that dressed as Ronin to take out the tracksuit mafia. So, but yeah, the scene with Nathaniel calling was just a heartbreaker. And then from there, we see them. They have lunch together. He gets his hearing aid fixed, and yeah, the deafness just, again, something else he sacrificed is his hearing. So you really get what he's doing. And then they talk about sacrifice at the restaurant. But he's also starting to see that maybe she's got something there, because he's giving her the reality of trying to be a hero, but he's not necessarily trying to talk her out of it. He's actually, when she says, "It felt like I finally found my calling," and he says, "I remembered when I had that feeling." So I think he's seeing a kindred spirit in Kate. And I don't think he saw that until they fought together and really worked together. So I see this progressing. It's definitely moving the characters forward. We also get to see Maya and Kazi have the talk about not pissing off Uncle, and as they're clearing out the KB toys, because now it's a compromised location, even though they really liked it. But can't wait for Hawkeye versus the Man with the Swords. I got a thought about that, and we're about to get to that. They decide that they're still talking about the case. Hawkeye actually questions whether there are other things from Avengers Compound out there, which I think is huge. I think that watch is going to come back to be something really big, but and maybe it's not something for this series. Maybe it's Stark Tech, and that's going to be the start of Armor Wars. That whatever it is in that watch is going to, be important to another series. I don't know, because it seems like we're running out of time for that MacGuffin. but I have a feeling it sounds like it's supposed to be bigger than it is. So, yeah, the place is named Fat Man Auto. So there are so many nods to Kingpin in here that it really feels like, and the voice of Uncle really did sound like D'Onofrio. But they go to Kate's mom's apartment and are basically going to break it, or hack into Bishop's security to see about some of these people like Kazi and Jack. And Clint's kind of on board about figuring out why Armand got killed. He thinks it might be tied together, maybe not, but at least he's now on board a little bit more. Where before his whole thing was just get this taken care of, get them to stop chasing this girl and then go home. Now he sees that there's a bigger picture going on and that those two things might be connected. And he thinks Jack is weird, but it's funny how Kate never really gives him all the information. Says he handed me a butterscotch. Not he handed me a butterscotch with Armand's name on it that I saw at Armand's apartment, type of thing. That would have been a little bit better information, but she doesn't give that part. But they break in. Well, they go in. They don't have to break in. She has a room there, but they hack into the computer and they get information on Kazi, and that he's actually works for a third-party vendor that Bishop Security uses, called Sloan Tech or Sloan Industries or Sloan Inc. So there's some connection between Bishop Technologies and the Tracksuit Mafia, which I think was kind of obvious that was going to be the case. But so we're starting to get that, and then Hawkeye senses something, hears something, goes to check the rest of the house, and that's when Jack basically puts the sword against his throat and telling him to freeze. Now, this episode left me with a lot of thoughts. William says, the Watch could be tied to Young Avengers since Kang is their first big villain since Iron Lad. Yeah, it could. That is a possibility. But like I said, it could also be Stark Tech. So, I don't know. I mean, it could be one of the watches they use to time travel. It could be the watch that he might have one of the Stark suits in it. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities. But I think that it's a big MacGuffin that is going to pay off, but maybe in a different series. It's not the same watch from Civil War. Civil War, the one we saw is more of a standard watch with a normal face. The one in Civil War is more like this. It's rectangular when he pulls it out and does the hand thing. So it's not exactly the same watch. It doesn't look the same. But yeah, I could see it being a similar design. It like that does that type of thing. But it's not exactly the watch from Civil War. There's some changes here that make me that a lot of things kind of make me start wondering how much they're pushing Jack as a possible bad guy. I mean, they've been pushing him to make him look suspect. And I'm starting to think that maybe he's not what we think he is. And looking at the history of the character and his relationship in the past to Hawkeye, and the fact that he and Clint haven't run into each other yet until the very end of this episode, I'm starting to wonder if maybe Jack is a plant. Maybe Jack works for S.H.I.E.L.D. or is a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who went in to work for the FBI and is trying to get close to Eleanor Bishop to find out what's going on because, the illegal activity and stuff. And maybe Clint and Jack know each other from the S.H.I.E.L.D. days. Because, again, in the comics, Jacques Duquesne, the swordsman, is Clint's first mentor that teaches him in the circus. So it would make a lot of sense if the two of them would have a history in S.H.I.E.L.D. and that he's working undercover and he doesn't know who's in the house, so he does that. And he wants the Ronin sword because he knows it's somehow connected to the Avengers. He wants to get it off the street. So, I mean, Jack could be a good guy. And it would explain why he is so freaking over the top, is that he's playing a role. But, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. They might just leave him being a bad guy, or he might be like a sub-level bad guy. I don't know. But my gut tells me there's something else going on with him. And I think it would be interesting if it turns out, like I said, he was a former agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. that Clint knows. Now, it might be that he turned bad, but I get the feeling, because then when he stopped, we've seen the trailers where they're having dinner together, and he goes, "Oh, thank you for saving the world." You know, it just seems like playing a part. Again, though, that's the writer in me when I look at these scenes and I think of that. Yeah, Mama Bishop is so much the big bad. I think Mama Bishop works for Kingpin, or is somehow connected. And then, of course, we have the other Kingpin connection from the first episode, which is the hotel where the auction takes place, and the charity ball is the same hotel that Fisk buys and lives in the third season of Daredevil. I mean, it's the same hotel that they used to film in. So it's the same courtyard, the whole thing. And I mean, to pick the exact same hotel seems to be more than just a coincidence. It's just too many things are starting to pile up to make me think it's not Wilson Fisk and that it's not Vincent D'Onofrio. Oh, I don't think that's wild speculation. I think that's pretty common speculation at this point, that Mama Bishop killed Daddy Bishop and used the attack as cover. Yeah. I think she was just I think she was going to kill Derek either way, and the killing, the attack just made it easier. You know, it was like opportunity just dropped in her lap. But yeah. Also, the other thing has to do with, I think if it is Clint that killed William, then Echo doesn't have a redemption arc coming up. You know, there needs to be that it wasn't me, it was Uncle that made this happen. It needs to be there for the character to make that redemption arc. And the fact that they've already announced that she's getting her own series, I think we need a redemption arc. I don't think they can just make her the bad guy in the new series. They need that redemption arc. Now, maybe she only finds out that it's not Ronan, and then she has to figure out who's behind it, and that's her series. I don't know. But, yeah, could be Marvel's Sopranos. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that we're going to find out that right now, my predictions, and they're, again, not putting money down on anything but maybe the Fisk one. We're going to get Vincent D'Onofrio back as Wilson Fisk. Jack Duquesne isn't what he appears to be, and they're trying to make him out to be the bad guy. I think he's going to have a history with Hawkeye from S.H.I.E.L.D. days. That I think he's an undercover agent or something. That Eleanor is definitely crooked, working either for or against Kingpin in the underworld. And that it wasn't Hawkeye in the Ronin suit that killed William Lopez. And that the Watch will somehow tie into one of the other series. Those are where I'm at right now in the series, and that's halfway through. Now, I do all these speculations remembering all the speculation from WandaVision and how so many people were certain that Quicksilver was the Fox Quicksilver. And like, I don't think it is. I was not on that board with that one. But then I thought Wonder Man was going to pop up too, and that Mephisto was going to pop up. And we didn't get any of that stuff. And also the architect was going to be somebody important, the aeronautical engineer or whatever it is, and none of that happened. So William says, I appreciate the handprint reference, yeah, which is part of her character. with her dad, and hope we get a reveal at the end of the series where she places the handprint on her face. Yeah. And if it doesn't come in this series, it definitely has to come in the start of the next series. But there's just, I think a lot of this is going to be set up for other series because we're halfway through at this point. There's only 3 episodes left, and there's still so much to deal with that dealing with the Watch and anything else that might have been recovered from Avengers Compound. Again, I think that's where Armor Wars is probably going to come in. We got to find out who the big bad is that leads the Tracksuit Mafia, what Eleanor Bishop is doing. Is she the big bad, or is it Uncle? I mean, because obviously that was a guy. So, and is Eleanor Madame Mask? That's always a possibility too. There's been that rumor. So there's just so much to deal with in 3 more episodes that it's hard to imagine they're going to be able to get to all of that stuff. And at some point, Yelena Belova is supposed to pop up. And she's going to come in with the knowledge that Clint is Ronin. So, that's going to throw in the works in. He's not telling anybody he's Ronin. Will Kate be upset that he's Ronin and was not told? So there's that sort of Damocles still swinging. But my thought is that the series ending, I think that we're going to have Kate with nobody because his mom, is going to turn out that her mom is bad. And I think Kate's going to end up going home with Hawkeye for Christmas. I think he's going to bring her home to the family. I think that's how the series will end. And I think rather than Jeremy Renner leaving the MCU, I'm starting to get the feeling that his role is just going to change. And with all the stuff they're doing to build up to Young Avengers, there's a chance that he's going to become the mentor, not only for Kate, but for the Young Avengers. That he's going to be the one that kind of watches over the team. So that's just my thought. And again, I don't have verification on any of that, but those are just my gut instincts at this point in the series, because I think Wanda would trust her kids with Hawkeye. Kate's already got a bond with them. He's one of the original Avengers. I just see him kind of becoming that role, the father figure for the Young Avengers, and he's the only father in the, Stark became a father but died. So there really isn't a father figure in the MCU. That's not dysfunctional. There's a lot of dysfunctional fathers in the MCU. But Hawkeye, Clint. So, all right, guys, that is going to wrap it up. I'm running almost a little long, so let me say that here. I hope you all have a great weekend. I will be back next week. We'll do another Hawkeye spoiler on Thursday, and we'll figure out what Tuesday and Wednesday are going to be as soon as I come up with the ideas. Thank you for watching. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons. Those thumbs up mean a lot. The views mean a lot. So thank you for that. But please hit the subscribe button. I'm here 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at this time every week. Have a great week. I will see you next week. Stick around for What's in the Box with Miss Jen coming up right now. Have a good night.